Welcome back to the PMR podcast. My name is Mitch. I'm an addict alcoholic, and this is episode 24.
24, shout out Kobe. My name's Andrew. I'm an addict, alcoholic. I'm wearing a hoodie today because that's just what I'm feeling. And
I
I'm
love that.
excited to be here.
Absolutely. Yeah. I was feeling, I'm glad we're ripping it today because I was feeling a little bit irritable, discontent, and we're getting into step work today, which is like probably the best possible thing I could be doing right now. So we always say it's funny how that works, and it really is. So I'm excited to get into that. But speaking on that last episode, I was just rewatching it. We posted it today, and just listening to you speak on your grandmother and all that stuff kind of also helped get out of my own way, listening to you and us speaking on that because perspective wise, we are doing really good. And I really wanted to say thank you again for sharing that and speaking so honestly on that. And like I realized that I hadn't even, I mean, I had said this to you like over the phone and stuff, but I am sorry for your loss, and I love you, bro, and thank you again for that one.
Hey, I love you too. And that was a really special episode for me. I don't know what viewers will get out of it or whatever, but like we said in the beginning when we started this in August, like we do this for us, like so we can stay sober. Like you helped another alcoholic last week when you recorded that episode with me. Because I mean, and you help another alcoholic every single day that I was in Minnesota for all those services, because you were checking in on me. Um, and you said something to me. You said, I'm a pray for you. And that was like, I mean, we joke about this shit, right? But like, that was a really cool thing to hear from you. Like, cause I'm not, that's not my bread and butter. That's not something that I just like think about, and it's a daily practice that is new for me. That's a very new addition to like my recovery, my tool belts, like of recovery, of sobriety. So hearing you say, that you're gonna pray for me, like that meant a lot to me. So thank you for that. And I mean, just quick reflecting, like last week was really like it was a really special episode because all of a sudden, like, we didn't really have much of like a plan or a script. We never have a script, but usually we'll have like a pretty decent outline. And we had an idea, but we kind of just let it run, and you kind of just let me run. Like all of a sudden I was just like, emotions and words were just kind of spilling out of my mouth, and I'm on the verge of tears, and I'm reminiscing about like memories I have with my grandmother. And it was, it's pretty amazing, like the bond that you and I have, um, simply by, talking to each other, like, and being there for each other in recovery, like being authentic with each other. It's a really special thing. Um, and I was talking to somebody at Heron yesterday about like some of the things that motivate me in my recovery, and that came to my mind is the fact that like I have a friendship with somebody that I've never like dapped up before my whole life, and like he will make me feel safe enough and like comfortable enough, and give me a space where I can be honest and raw and sad and like get emotional, and I feel like he picks me up. And that's one of the biggest motivators for me, is that like that feels wicked good, man. So don't ever underestimate, you being there for me, because you are there for me, and I'm super grateful for it. But that was an awesome episode.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, man. I appreciate that. Like we both fuck with each other heavy. I second all the sentiments you said there. um yeah, we got a little bromance. It's cute.
It's
uh
cute.
um but yeah, no, it was a good episode. And as we said, I remember like right before we started, you're like, hey, you think we have enough? Should we add another topic? And I was like, no. I mean, you and I could talk about like ants for probably 3 hours. So whenever you've said that before, I'm like, no. I think we'll be good.
I know
Uh,
I have said that like four, 3 or 4 times, and each time you just kind of look at me and chuckle to yourself, and you just shake your head, and then like an hour into recording it, I'm like, oh
yeah,
damn, like
we
we
didn't
really.
even get to something. Yeah. Yeah, I love that.
Mm,
It's all love though, bro. Uh, Speaking on this episode, this is a super important one. We did steps 1, 2, and 3, and so this is kind of continuing that little step series, I guess, that we have, and which is really important. And I think I've been really thinking about this the last week, ever since I listened to that one guy, Chris Raymer, I think is his name.
mm,
And it's like these YouTube videos from 10 years ago. And it's like, I can feel myself getting into like nerding out on AA now, and which is terrifying. But like, the whole idea of being like a big book thumper and like hardcore AA dudes and shit like that. I always used to be like, fuck that. Like, I want to do it how I do it. And then the more I'm
mm.
getting into the book and listening to these dudes and stuff like that, I'm like, I feel myself nodding in the car to things that I used to not. And his thing really is like, he's a big this guy works in recovery and treatment centers, or worked. The video is 10 years old. I don't even know if he's still with us anymore, but the video is 10 years old. He worked in recovery, and his stances on things remain true to me to this day. Speaking on like, uh, you know, he was a believer in treatment. He thinks that's a good thing. He was a believer in therapy. Think that's a big part of recovery for every addict and alcoholic to have a therapist outside of recovery, which I agree with. And then his main thing though is like, if you're struggling and stuff, get into the fucking book. Like, get
Mm-hmm.
into the big book. Like, for people that don't know, like the 12 steps and saying like, oh, I went to a meeting and like stuff like that. The meeting is just an aspect of the recovery. It's not like that's all that there is. We have sponsorship meetings, and the big book. And the big book is the center of it all. And it has all the answers in there. I mean, it really does. And that's why I think going over these steps is so important, because like, if I talk to people, and talking to myself a year into recovery, I was like, yeah, I don't really fuck with AA. They're not, I would point this, that, and the other that I didn't like. And that's because I didn't want to work these steps, bro. They're hard. Like, it makes you uncomfortable. It talks about God. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like an easy thing to jump into. And I think if you're out there questioning getting into recovery, or questioning going to a meeting or getting a sponsor, or you've tried it and you didn't like it, like, if you tried it and you didn't get to the steps, I would say try it again and try to get through the steps. And then if you don't
Mm.
like it after that, then drop it. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to hurt. I can promise you this. And I don't know if you agree with this or not, but if you get a sponsor and work the 12 steps, it's not going to send you backwards. I can
Nope.
tell you that much. I
Nope.
mean, at the bare minimum, it'll keep you where you're at, but it ain't going to send you backwards. So that's
Well,
my spiel on that.
let me qualify that. Like, it's not going to send you backwards unless you stop, like, admire in some of the stuff that we're about to talk about. You know what I mean? It could send you backwards if you do a step 4 and then you never tell anyone, and you just look at that piece of paper and think about all the shitty things that you've ever done.
Good point.
Like, and that's what I mean is like, this is a prescription, right? Like, that's the kind of the way I look at it is 12 steps are a prescription, right? And if I don't take it as prescribed, then it's not going to work. And just to speak on like meetings in the book and steps, and again, like, again, I got to qualify myself here. Like, I'm 21 or 22 months, I don't know what it is right now, sober. Like, I have today, that's all I have, but I don't have that many 24 hours. Like, I'm new at this. This is a new habit for me. This is a new muscle I'm strengthening. I am not the authority, and I'm working through the steps right now. I'm step 5, like, which is difficult for me, and it's kind of poetic to me, and very helpful to me that this is what we talk about today. Being at kind of a crossroads in within these 3 steps right now, but my understanding and what I've been taught and what I've observed is that I go to meetings to get out of myself. like, and to listen to others, to gain knowledge and insight from others, experience, strength, and hope from others. And honestly, like, on the other part of it is I network like with other alcoholics. Like, I build a sober network. And that's one, like, that's really the purpose of meetings for me. Like, and daily, like, that helps me, that propels me forward. But like, I don't do any unless I'm in an AWOL or a step meeting. AWOL is a way of life, and it's like a certain type of kind of intense step meeting. Or unless I'm in a big book meeting, like, uh, unless I'm in one of those type of meetings, like, meetings don't really, I don't really do work on myself in step
Mm.
in meetings. Like, I'm there kind of gathering information, maybe talking a little bit, working through some stuff. Like, but the steps is where I do work on myself, like that. And honestly, like, my experience is that one without the other kind of like is useless, is nearly useless. Like, I went to meetings for the better part of my first year sober without really like taking a deeper look into the steps really at all. I had a sponsor, but he's a good sponsor, and he suggested things, and then he would let me make my own mistakes and be there when I made those mistakes to redirect me. But those mistakes I made were like, nah, you know what? I think I'm going to wait on the steps. I think I'm going to wait on the steps. And I just go to meetings thinking that was going to keep me sober. And like, I ended up like, after my first year, I was kind of like,
Yep.
I don't feel good. And what I found is like, only by combining all of what this program has to offer have I begun to even feel any semblance of peace with myself. Um, and I think this step is is insane, in a good way. Like, it's a completely against my nature to do something like this, and that's why I've fought it for so long. But you know,
I,
I think you gotta lead us right in, because
um,
you have kind of successfully completed this. And it's, I mean, it's something that I'm, again, it's interesting because you having gone one time through this step and me kind of being in the middle, it's like it's crazy because I'm like in the trenches, like, and you're like looking back at me like, listen, it gets better. Like, let's come on, buddy.
yeah. Yeah. No, I hear you. And I'm gonna start writing shit down while we're doing these podcasts because I always have an idea while you're talking and then forget. So that's what I was doing just now. But
Mm-hmm.
to clarify also, like you were saying, it's super important, and I appreciate you saying that once again, we are not an authoritative figure on any of this shit. We don't, and we're not speaking for AA at all.
Mm-mm.
You know, we are not a representative of AA. We are merely just members of it, and we go there and we work the steps. There's not even a they. It's not an organization like that. But I did want to say too that's like for the steps, like if and this guy was saying this also, like just going, he something that I don't really agree with completely with him was what he was saying, like just going and sitting in the meeting is not going to be enough, you know. And I actually do, you know, like there's people that say keep coming back and just for today, those types of sayings, which we all know and we love. But he's saying that like that's great, but if you're really an alcoholic or you're really an addict, like just coming and sitting, you know, is not going to do it. You need to go and sit, and you need to get a sponsor, and you need to work the steps, and then after you finish the steps, you need to carry that message to the next person that's struggling, and that's how you'll stay sober, and that's how you'll stay out of being irritable and discontent, you know. And
Mm.
he hammers that. I mean, like hammers that hard. And I kind of agree with a lot of that to an extent. And I like it's hard too because I don't want to be in a place where I'm like, this is what you have to do, and this is the only way to do it, and this is how you're going to have a good recovery because I know, you know, because I don't. But it's hard when you see like I have friends that are early-ish in recovery and have some time and like stopped going to meetings and said they found other ways to recover. And for me, it's like, damn, I wish I could have done that. You know what I mean? But then I talk to them and they're, things aren't going well and they're thinking about using
Mm-hmm.
and drinking. And it's like, maybe you should come back. But I don't know. It's interesting. It's a
It
hard,
is.
it's a hard thing to balance. Like, what's the way, you know?
It is. And it's at Heron, what I like what we do is we introduce, obviously we're pretty AA heavy, for good reason, right? That the numbers are there. Like if you're a data person, like look at the numbers of people and the percentage recovered within AA versus just in general, and you'll see that there's a reason why people gravitate towards AA, like, or that it's purported to be the most effective mode of recovery, is because it historically is the most effective vehicle of recovery. But what we do is we offer AA, we also offer NA, which I find helpful. We offer, which is Narcotics Anonymous. We do stuff with Smart Recovery, which is like DBT and cognitive behavioral therapy, and it's just
Mixes
another
of
way. It's another way to recover. And the other thing that we do, and which I gravitate towards, is refuge recovery, which is Buddhists oriented, and me being into meditation and breath work. And you know I jive with Buddhism. I like it. It agrees with me, and I kind of see merit in it, right? But the thing that I always say when I'm leading groups, or I'm talking with the community at Heron, is like, listen, like I find a lot of merit in refuge recovery, but my experience is that like I can use refuge recovery and the meditations in there and the eightfold path and everything as like a tool within my recovery, but like I use it in tandem with AA, because AA for me is a pillar. Like AA is the foundation and the pillar and the anchor and just the thing that keeps my recovery solid. And everything else can be a tool, but AA is the way that I stay sober. And that's just for me.
Yep. Yeah, I completely agree. That's I agree with you, and that's where I'm at on that too. Last thing I'll say on that before we jump into it, because that's what we're trying to do, is that if you want to look at when you brought up the numbers, that spurred another thing I wanted to say real quick, is that if you look at the success rate of inpatient rehabs and outpatient recovery and stuff like that today, it's under 20%, and they're basing that off of who goes out and relapses after. Under 20% of people that go to inpatient stay sober after. And like that's fucking insane, bro. That's a losing battle. Like,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of that to me is like that whole relapse prevention plan, and there needs to be a step down. And like some places don't integrate AA into their treatment plan, or uh don't integrate it enough. And I think it's like there's this idea in some groups that relapse is part of recovery. And like, to be honest with you, if there's something that I'm really firm on, like in my opinion, I don't subscribe to that mentality at all. Like I don't agree with that at all. People that say like it's okay, you can come back. I mean, obviously you can come back, but going into recovery and with the idea in your head as an addict, for me, if someone told me in the beginning and I really latched onto that relapse is part of it and it's okay, I would have used that. That's the only cosign that I need to go out and
Mm-hmm.
use and be like, look, well, they said it was okay. They said it's part of it. You know what I mean? So I fucking hate that relapse is part of recovery shit. I mean, obviously it can happen, and it happens and you can come back from it. I understand that. It's just the idea of like, it's the idea of thinking that that is a possibility in kind of like a cop out way, I think is how I see it. But fuck that. All right. How it works. Okay. Getting into step, last time we did a step thing, we did 1, 2, and 3. And just
Mm-hmm.
to rehash that, step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. So a lot of that is powerlessness, and believing in a higher power. Super important foundation to build. That's probably why there are steps one, two, and three. Then going into step four is the actions when we start to do things, right? It's when we start to like write things down and really get into the meat and bones of these 12 steps. And step four, I'll read it and then I'll have you speak on it. Step four, we made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves.
Right. Searching and fearless moral inventory. Um, I'm interested to hear your perspective as well, being in different places in the steps. But this is I've heard it said in meetings that this is where, whatever, they separate the men from the boys. But what I think what they mean is where people either they go back out because they can't handle this, or they stick it through, put their head down, write some stuff out, and then work through it. For me, this has been like this has kind of been my boogeyman, man. Like I've been talking with you for a while, right? And I formally took a step three in August. Um, and so kind of since then, right? What have I been doing? I've been kind of sitting on my ass, for lack of a better term. Like I turned my will and my life over to care of God as I understood, God. And then what, right? It's like my sponsor was like, all right, it's time to get into step four. And I've heard it said in meetings and otherwise, like after step three, the best thing that you can do is, having formally taken step three, go home and start writing a list like that day. And I did not do that. That's not my story. And I wish I had, um, quite frankly, because the longer that I put it off, the longer that like I stewed on it, and this is true for anything for me as an addict and just a human being, is like the longer I put it off, the bigger it seemed. Like
Mm-hmm.
the bigger of a task and a nuisance. And not only that, but like I looked at it and I was like, this is really gonna suck. Like this is gonna suck. And now that I've largely completed it, having started it maybe around Christmas time, I pulled out a Word document because my handwriting sucks and I don't like to write, and I'd rather just type. And I pulled out a Word document and I just started typing. And that's what my sponsor said, because, I can get caught up on form and, my mentality is like, I need to do this perfectly. Like, I need to get every little resentment against every person, place, and thing that I have, every single thing that I've ever done bad, every time I've like stolen a nickel from little Johnny, and like every damn thing that I've ever done wrong, every lie I've told, I'm like, I got to get it all down. And I talked to my sponsor about this, and he kind of looked at me and he kind of chuckled to himself, and then he said, "Listen, do you think this is the first time you think this is the only time you're gonna do this thing?" He's like, there are going to be things that you can add to this list every single day. Like, this is why we take inventory at the end of our days, is because this step four, like, it's not a definitive list. It's not like you're going to write this list, Andrew, and then all of a sudden you're never going to have any other resentments or defects or shortcomings ever again. Like, they're going to keep popping up. But the point of it is you got to clean out all the skeletons in your closet, or as much of them as you can, so that you can start to feel good about yourself and where you're headed in the future. Uh, and I don't know. I mean, what I can say is that I've been sitting and writing, and you know, there's some obvious things and obvious people and places and things and memories that come to mind. Um, and it's kind of like the floodgates, man. Like, as soon as I kind of wrote those, like some of the bigger ones, all of a sudden this stuff just started pouring out of me. Like, and it was crazy. It's like I sat there and all of a sudden I'm writing furiously about these people who have wronged me. And you can kind of go into the form of of how we write it. But then right when I'm looking into my part, like I start to see all these patterns. I'm like, damn, nobody really has ever like wronged me as badly as I think they have. Like all this stuff I have in my head and resentfulness and hatred really that I have for people. Like when I examine my part in what happened, I'm like, damn, like, that finger, right? My sponsor says this. He's like, I could point the finger all day long.
Yep.
But like while I'm pointing that finger, there's three fingers pointed right back at me.
That's my favorite,
And there's always three fingers pointed right back at me, man.
at
So
least.
it's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Step 4 is a wild one. And you talked about how you've sat on it. I wouldn't trip off that, bro. Like I fucking sat on it for years. So
Mm.
you're right where you should be at. Um, the the thing about making a searching and fearless more inventory of ourselves, the thing about that is I don't want to do that.
Nope. Nope.
And so I also co-sign your sentiment about this is where people are like, no, actually, I don't like AA, and the seats are a little uncomfortable. I'm not going back. Uh,
Mhm.
so it's like this one for me too was hard, and once I started rolling with it, I started really rolling, but it was a slow roll down that mountain. And it's what's wild is that like the OGs like Bill and Dr. Bob and all those guys, they finished these steps in one night.
Mhm.
Like that used to be like OGAA. You got a sponsor and finish the steps in one night.
Yeah, no.
And there's something to
Dang.
that, bro. Like maybe finishing it in a week or a month, like really locking into that. There might be something there. There probably is. There definitely is. But when I got to these and started working them, it is a hard one to do because we get into that. You can get into that morbid reflection, and you can get
Yeah.
into that, like especially on step 5, not as much on 4, because 4 is still us looking at who had wronged us, right? Or to our perception at that point, who had wronged us, right? And we'll find out in 5 and 6 that it's really never. No one just like goes out of their way to hurt you, and you had nothing to do with it. That just doesn't happen. I mean, it does, and like you got like robbed or something, you know what I mean? But in terms of relationships that we're writing down here, it's very much all sides. And so, um, the mechanics of it, as it was explained to me, and there's variations of it and stuff like that. But we write down. I have a template on my phone. You said you were typing it, but I also typed it, I guess. But I have all my inventories in my notes app. So if anyone ever steals my phone, I'm sorry.
They're gonna have
But
a lot of information about Mitch.
you'll never guess my password. But so the template as it goes that I have is you write down I am resentful at, and then you're going to put down a person, place, or thing. So I had family, friends, I had places that I put down, and you just put
Institutions.
institutions, right? And so like I would put something down there, just the blanket thing. So if it's like my brother, I don't have a brother, so we'll just rock with that. You'd say like I am resentful at my brother, and then under that is going to be the cause, okay? And then you're going to try to consolidate a specific cause. So if it's like a bunch of things, this is how it was told to me. You kind of want to try to put it down to one specific thing there, and then write multiple inventories on each one if you want to do it like that. Or you can also put them all together, but it was explained to me the more specific, the better. So if I had a specific issue with that, with him, then I would put that down. And then you're going to come to the next part, which says what it affects. And the options that I was given were personal, sexual, pride, self-esteem, ambition, and security. And you're just going to click off, circle, or write down which ones that affected. So if I said like, I couldn't even really give an example. Um, but you're gonna click those for a lot of them from my memory. Like I clicked almost or circled. I don't know why I'm saying clicked. I circled almost all of them.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, because like, if I have a resentment against you, I have a resentment against you. You know what
Oh
I mean?
yeah.
So I feel personally attacked. That might hurt my sexual, because it's like, I'm a man, and like, especially if it's like a relationship with a partner or something. Pride
Mm-hmm.
is always gets circled because I'm so prideful. Self-esteem is right along there with pride. Ambition is right along there with pride, and security. I mean, security in general. If you feel resentful, you might feel threatened. So you circle those, and then quickly, and this is what tripped me out. Quickly, we switch into your side of things, right? That's all that there is when it comes to a resentment. Looking outwards is, I'm resentful at this, the cause, why I'm resentful, and what it affects.
That's it.
We quickly go into a prayer, asking our higher power to relieve us and show empathy and tolerance to this person, place, or thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then this is super important. And this is where I remember I told my sponsor after reading this, I was like, this feels like I'm beating up on me. Like, I thought we were talking about them. And he like laughed. He like laughed at my face. But it was like, looking at what others had done to us is about as far as most of us get, which is huge. Now
That's
let's
right.
look at, yeah, now let's look at our part. And then you have like 10 lines of prompts. Where was I selfish? What did I want? Where was I dishonest? What was I unwilling to admit to myself? Where was I self seeking? How did I want to appear? Where was I frightened? Where was I inconsiderate? Where was I at fault? What could I have done instead? And where did I arouse bitterness, jealousy, or suspicion? After you finish all of those, that's a full inventory on that resentment. And then going into that, part of that is actually 5. And then 6 is praying, going through that with your sponsor and removing that resentment. And that's kind of how you rip an inventory. But the super important part is that second part, because as addicts and alcoholics, we, like you were saying, love to do this, love to point out, and it makes us really uncomfortable to point back. And for
Mm.
us, a great tool is looking at where we were wrong. And I remember getting tripped up on the first two. I was like, my answers for like, uh, where was I selfish? And I was like, I wasn't. Like, where was I my favorite one, actually, by far. I know this last thing I'll say on this, and then hear what you have to say, is where was I dishonest? What was
Yeah.
I unwilling to admit about myself? I think that's the greatest question on the inventory, because say I had a resentment against, like, say I had a resentment against, I'll just say it. One of my resentments was my father, because I never met him. And it's like, I have a resentment against not having a father. Well, guess what? Like, your mom did a procedure where you're not going to have a father. So where were you dishonest? Like, that wasn't going to be an option. You know what I mean? And so because of that, just bringing it into more perspective, because we have a perspective issue. You know what I mean? We have an issue seeing the full picture, because we have those horse blinders on. And
Mm.
my favorite part is where I was dishonest, I think.
Right. Right. I think, I mean, I can agree that all those prompts, like a lot of them for me is like it kind of boils down to the same thing.
Yep.
Like what it was for me in most every situation was like blind, like a blindness. Like I'm blind. Like I'm blind to my own action, and I'm hypersensitive to the actions of others. And it's funny you say that, like that dishonest thing, because everything for me, like I personalize everything.
Mm-hmm.
Like if something is done and it affects me negatively, then it was done against me. Like if it rains and I was supposed to go for a run or something,
Yeah.
or like if yeah, if it rains, I was supposed to go for a run. I'm mad at the weather because it rained just because I was going to go for a run, and that's fucking insane. Like it did not rain against Andrew. Like it rained. Like, and that's how I am with people. Like if anything happens that's remotely, you know, consequential for me, or is slightly is going to be slightly like annoying for me to deal with, or this is kind of this is against what I would want, or against, my wishes or plans for the day, or anything like that. Like, and it's a minor inconvenience even, then I'm mad at someone because, obviously they were just trying to screw me over.
Hmm.
What I'm seeing with everything that I've been writing is like what it comes down to is I'm secure, I'm insecure, I'm dishonest, and I'm prideful. Like, and those are the things that I see over and over again, is like me being prideful and pushing people away. And then when I push them away, I'm mad that they're gone. I'm like, why'd you leave? And so I think the biggest thing, one of the biggest things that step four has done for me and helped me to see is that is those patterns. Like, and it's a little bit different for
Good
everyone.
point, bro.
Like, I think it's a little bit different for everyone. I think, as you and I have gotten to know each other pretty well, I think probably it's probably pretty similar for you and I, but like it's different for everyone. But my point is that I've seen themes, like things that, like you said, in all those different spots of like what was my part in this, and then, where was I, where was I selfish, where was I dishonest, all of those like prompts. Like, what I'm seeing is, I mean, yes, I'm circling a lot of them, but like the main character defects start to show up, of like, wow, I'm selfish and I'm dishonest and I'm egotistical, and like I have an inferiority complex and I'm controlling. Like, and it starts all of a sudden when I see it over and over and over and over again on dozens of these things, I'm like, oh shit, like there's no denying this. Like, there's written evidence of the fact that like life is not happening to me and I'm not like a victim here, but
Hmm.
I'm playing a massive part
Hmm.
in all of these things. That and it's interesting how it correlates. Like, these events are all things that I used to use at. Like, I used to get effed up, like, and drink and do drugs because these things happened to me. And I think that's part of why we're doing this, right? Is like we want to write these things down because we don't want these things to be fuel for me to use again.
Right.
Like, I want to extinguish that. Like, I want to take away the power from these fucking past experiences. And the only way I can do that is by finding my part in them and then letting them go. But
Mhm.
we can get into that. But
Yeah, I agree. Then and like this is super important too, like you were saying, like the patterns. I love that you said that because that's a big one. After I had done like I think I did four really fast the
mm,
first time and kind of sloppily and not very precisely. And my sponsor was like, do another four or five, and like, and this is what I want you to try to work on here and there and whatever. And so I did that, and then I think it was like my 10th or 11th one, like nailed it. Like I was specific. I was good at highlighting what I was wrong with and all this stuff. And he was like, "This is an inventory." So it took me 11, 11 inventories, right, to get one that kind of fit into exactly what you want to try to see. And I remember early on when I was doing one, two, three, and four, my first four, whatever, I was like, yo, to my sponsor, I was like, this is like pretty fucked up. Like I feel like I'm picking on myself. Like, I feel like I'm really like beating myself down by this. Like, I don't know if this is helping me. I was like, this is like pretty uh like self inflicting wounds by me writing all this
mm,
down. And he was like,
mm,
it is if you don't put action behind this. Like if you just write this and sit on it, like you were saying earlier, which was perfect. If you just write these out and sit on them and don't move forward or don't take action off that, it is it is going to beat you up. It is going to swallow you whole. And that's a
mm,
big point to make. Like, you can't get stuck on any of these steps really. And if you do, you got to try to get out of that being stuck, because like I remember when I was doing these four, five, and six, to be honest, bro, I was like, I had points where I was, and I'll just be completely honest, I had like, this is keeping a stack, bro. I had like suicidal thoughts, bro. Like
mm,
when I was working these, like I was like, when we look at defects of character and selfish and stealing, and like stealing's not a defect of character, but like
cheating.
cheating, like all that stuff, it's really easy to be like, if you're not working with your sponsor and going to meetings on top of this and talking to friends and stuff, like you just fall into this hole of like, I'm a terrible person, I've done terrible things, and
Mm.
like I'm doing my resentments, and we're not even we're not even looking at what they did, we're looking what I did. And you know what I mean? And it's like, dude, it can get bad, and you need to be with your sponsor and have friends in the program while you're doing this, because it's just easy to slip into morbid reflection. And there's a part of us that likes feeling bad too. And before you know it, you know, you're not doing it, you're not doing this, you're skipping a meeting and shit like that. And so it's a hard 3 steps in a row. And but I'll tell you this, bro, coming out of that and working on it, and it doesn't have to be like that. I think the reason I struggled so much was because I didn't want to face some of my inventories. I kept all the bad ones for later. And
Mm.
once I did that, bro, like I really mean this. And I literally felt weight like coming off my shoulders, like more like I would wake up lighter.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know what I mean? Like that's some real shit. And yeah.
Dude, and I appreciate you being honest, like, because I feel that, like, that, having suicidal thoughts, and I mean, I don't know if it's been there for me to that extent, but I know that, like, being in the process of writing right now, like, I've been lucky that I've been in contact with my sponsor. I've been in contact with you. Like, people know where I'm at with the steps. But I think an important thing, like, to say is, like, I've had to tell myself again and again and remind myself again and again, like, these last, 4 weeks as I've been writing, is like, I got to be kind to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, while I'm being mean, while I'm seeing everything and pointing the finger back at myself and identifying all these shortcomings and things that, that I did wrong, like, on paper, while I'm doing this process, I also have to take the time to be kind to myself.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I've noticed, like, my energy has been lower, and, like, I'm kind of more difficult to deal with in terms of just, like, interactions with family or with friends. Like, I've been less inclined to, like, want to go work out because I'm just, like, sluggish. Like, and instead of beating myself up, I've had to tell myself again, like, and again, I'm doing something difficult when I'm writing, like, difficult, something that, like, hurts, that is like a direct attack on my ego, which
Mm-hmm.
is unnatural for a person like me, like, completely against my better thinking, like, as an
Yeah.
addict.
Yeah.
So while I'm in that, like, state of rebel, like, I gotta be good to myself. And it's not always easy. Like, I mean, and this too, like, we're our harshest critics, and I can be pretty damn tough on myself. But I I think that's like a disclaimer that I wish I had, and that I'm glad, like, I've kind of taken hold of, is like, all right, I gotta take it easy. Like, when I'm not writing, like, I go to work, obviously, like, continue to fulfill my obligations and my
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities, but, like, don't beat myself up, otherwise. Like, if I'm sluggish, if I'm slow, if I'm not with it, like, because I'm not with it, like, this is difficult. And that's why, continue, like you said, continuing with the step and not fucking stopping here is, like, the biggest thing. Like, because
Yeah.
if you stop, like, I'll be in that state forever, and I'm not staying in that state forever, bro. I'd
No.
rather go use.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. And it's like, I remember I used to say I've never left a meeting and felt worse. But while I was doing these steps, I remember I wasn't really working, and I was basically just doing the 12 steps for like a good like 2 months. And like there's a point to those dudes ripping the steps in one day or one week, is because like we are not supposed to get into morbid reflection on these. You're not supposed to sit on this and be like, woe is me, I don't want to do another one, that one made me feel sad. That's not the point. The point is to rip it out, be honest with yourself, look at what, like, we're trying to cleanse, we're trying to let this go kind of as fast as possible. So if you can show that you can do a full inventory, say it for what it is. This is how it is. This is how I reacted. Okay, I acknowledge that. Then I'm going to pray, release that with your sponsor. And what's next? Like
Mm.
that's very, very important. And I remember sitting in those meetings and I said one time, like, I'm not getting anything out of these meetings right now. You know, I'm feeling like I'm just thinking about me while I'm in here. I feel like shit, yada, yada, yada. And like the guys came to me after the meeting and were like, we got you. Like, you're doing okay. You're doing perfect. It's supposed to be hard right now. And like, keep moving along, keep chugging through it, try to find some other things that you can do outside of recovery because you don't want it to be the only thing you do, right? Like you were saying
Mm.
with work. And I got out of that through the advice and love of the people around me, really. But moving on to step 5, though, step 5 says we admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. And it's
Mm.
kind of included. Step 4 and 5 are kind of the inventory process altogether. But what's your take on that so far?
Um, I'm kind of in a process, right, with my sponsor, and I don't, I'm not going to say this is the right way to do it. I'm not going to say this is the only way to do it, but I've gotten some use out of it. Is he kind of he knows everything about me, and um, so he gave me a homework, right? Like, as in, this when you start step 4, you're gonna knock out the big ones first. Those ones that I know are heavy on your mind, like relationship wise, memory wise, trauma wise, get them down. And then we're going to take like a we're going to take a step 5 on these, like while you're still writing step 4.
Yep.
Just because I want to show you and give you a little hope. That's what he told me, that like that you can be released of these. And so I wrote, there's really three major things that I think about a lot that are massive resentments of mine. And I worked through the inventory process with them. And what I will say, being new at this, is like, it's damn easy for me to think that I can stop after the second part of this. Like, I admit to God and to myself. Like, boom, stop there. Like, because I don't. And maybe it's, as a man, I mean, it's difficult for anybody, but like, it's I don't want to tell somebody else like this is what happened, and tell them about my fucking massive egotistic, my ego complex, and the dishonesty that have been rampant in my life, and then talk about all these things that I've done wrong. Like, it's difficult for me to trust people
Mm-hmm.
as it is. Like, I'm there are a select few people in the world that I really, really trust, like with my whole being. And um my sponsor, thankfully, is one of them. And but still, like, all right, like, I got the list. I'll read it out to God and pray, and ask God to help remove these from me and turn them over to his care, and all of that. And I'll admit to myself the nature of these wrongs, because I've been admitting them to myself this whole damn time. Now that I see them and they're out there, I'm going to beat myself up plenty with them. But I'm like, I'll be damned if I'm going to take this list and read it out loud, like. And that's just like, I mean, that's because I'm early in this step. Like, that's where my head is, like. And I know, right, like, having done it with 3 things, and spoken out loud, and listen to my sponsor respond, and not really even respond, just kind of nod his head and like tell me, like, listen, everything's okay. Like, it is a powerful experience. And the other part of it is like, where I think people are going to ridicule me or think I'm the worst person in the world, because I certainly think I'm the worst person in the world. Like, when I'm thinking about this shit, like, I finish up and my sponsor says, me too.
Mm.
And I'm like, damn, all right. Like, maybe I'm not the worst person in the world. And, being early, that's kind of where I'm at. But that, like, me too feeling, like, is it
Huge.
releases me, man. It really does. It feels good.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. Yeah, the Me Too thing, or that sharing that shared experience with another alcoholic and finding out that like everybody in the room has something close to that,
Mm.
um, it is very powerful. And
Mm-hmm.
I think like I agree with you when it said when you said like I can admit to God and to ourselves, but there's a part of talking to someone else about it and it not being yours anymore. You know what I mean? Like I don't have control of it anymore if I tell someone else the honest truth
Right.
because now they have that over me. You know what I mean? Um,
Mm.
and like a lot of dishonesty is how I lived, and a lot of dishonesty is how a lot of us lived. Like, uh, I mean, remember when we had Dan Carity on, he was talking about how he could spew multiple lies together and stuff. And I was like, hell yeah, bro. I was like proud of being able to do shit like that. Like,
Uh-huh.
like a whole web of lies, literally. And um, part of getting through all those lies and shit is getting into this work right here. And the exact nature of our wrongs is hand in hand with our defects of character. And I remember like writing those down and talking with my sponsor on it. Like it was another one of those experiences of relief, and which surprised me, to be honest with you, bro, because I used a lot of these inventories and a lot of these issues with people, places, and things that I had as my fuel. That was my daily fuel. When I was at school, swimming and stuff like that, like I would like channel resentments, looking back on it, this is what I did. I would like channel resentments to get jacked up to race, like,
Mm-hmm.
or to compete, I would, anger was very much like not some weird thing that happened every once in a while. I lived in a state of anger and resentment,
Mm.
which was, I talk about being at school in a place of hell, that's why I was in a place of hell because I lived in anger and resentment.
And you invited it.
And I
You
invited,
invited it.
yeah, and part of me loved it,
Mm-hmm.
and like
Mm-hmm.
after I released, and I was so hesitant to get through these fucking, talking with someone about the exact nature of my wrongs and writing down my defects of character because I was like, where's my fuel gonna go? I don't want to be some like, hi, nice to meet you person. I liked that, like, oh, you seem scary, you seem this, you seem that,
Mm-hmm.
whatever, like, all that dumb shit. And once I worked through that and spoke with my sponsor about it and wrote down my defects of character and really looked at it like that, I felt free.
Mm.
Like that
Mm.
freedom is like a real fucking thing, dude. Like
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
I
bro.
like I like felt I've felt so much better, and I can't describe it other than like it like it being released. And the thing about that too is like this is a good point to make. It's not free for gone forever. It's not like you
No.
do all this shit and then you're just good for like, all right, did that, I'm done. When a resentment comes up, this needs to be noted too. When resentments come up, because they come up every day, you could get cut off and get a resentment or whatever, or get into a fight with someone, or it could build. There's a lot of ways to get them, and we'll find a way to get them. I promise you that. You have to
Mm-hmm.
go back and do what you learned. These 12 steps are tools. It is not like oh, I did my 12 steps and I'm done. No, you're literally building a tool belt, and once you learn how to use that tool belt, now you have that tool belt on forever.
Mm-hmm.
So it's important to come back to the inventories. It's important to come back to the amends. It's important to come back to uh, you know, re-engaging your conscious contact with a higher power. All of these can be returned to, and all of these should be returned to.
Something you said in there that I like am scared of, have been scared of, I'm less scared of now, but it's still something that like I think about is like for a long time I identified like my identity was wrapped around my resentments.
Mm-hmm.
Like everything I am and was like like the fuel thing is so true for me too. Like, and I didn't spend as long in athletics as you did, but that was my fuel all the time. Like in the gym, on the field, on the court, wherever I was like competing was all right. Like, how am I going to get angry? All right, I got a million reasons I could get angry because I'm holding on to this, like whatever it is. Like, but even deeper than that is like my worry and my the part of my addiction that feels threatened is like the fact that when I give this stuff to another human being, when I put it out in the air, and then we process it, we talk about it, and then he helps me let it go. Like, who am I then? Like, I've
Hmm.
spent so much of my time, like so much of my effort, my emotions, my development, my energy, like being this person, like being angry about this, being dishonest, being wrapped up in this memory, being like full of whatever emotion it is for whatever resentment it is. And when I let that go, like my worry is like, all right, I'm just going to be this gaping void, like
Hmm.
of what, like emptiness, like like what person am I? Like these are my experiences. This is my life, like, and that's the worry I have. And I think my sponsor was telling me, and he was just like, listen, you don't stay sober by staying the same person that you were when you came in these doors. Like, you when we say we change, like we change who we are, like this is where we change who we are. Like he told me, he's like, I assure you, you're not like an empty void. Like, you're
Hmm.
full of all these things that are positive, but we've been suppressing them for so long. It's almost like I only know how to live in the negative,
Mm.
you
Yeah,
know?
for real. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, all I was thinking about when you were saying that too is like we haven't like, that pure, when you're like a kid or whatever, like that pure self or whatever, and whenever you start getting into, when I guess you got to start to see like the real world and like middle school and high school, and start all that shit starts, and you start to morph into whatever you morph into. It's like
Right.
everyone has that pureness, and we're trying to get back to a place where we can live purely and feel free. Like, I heard a guy talking last week at a meeting, and he was like, uh I'm not afraid to see anyone, like talking about how he finished the 12 steps and he made all the amends he did. And like, he was like, I'm not afraid to see anyone, I'm not afraid to contact anyone. I wake up and I feel this like freedom that is like, almost, it feels alien. Even when he was saying it, like, I haven't finished everything, and I have, and, there's things I need to go back and do and stuff like that. And like, for him to stand there and be like, to preach this like real freedom, this real like lightness, I was like, damn, that sounds fucking sick. Like, it really does, and we can have that. It's all right here. You know what I
That's the
mean?
feeling I was looking for when I was getting high.
Right. That's a good point. Right. Right. That freedom, except, yeah, except our way of handling it was self-medicating and basically shoving it down to get to that
Exactly.
emptiness. And this is the opposite. This is like hard work, and we're releasing it through in a positive way, And I guess, like you were saying, I wrote down when you were talking about holding yourself hostage, to those resentments, and like, what a miserable place to live mentally, right? Like, I just think like, God, I don't know how I did that, living in such a miserable mindset. Like, if I want to have a big lift or a big race or whatever, let me channel how my eighth grade girlfriend broke up with me. Like, what the fuck, bro? Like recalling events and resentments to try to get to this like next level of athletics or whatever, or like a big lift. Like, that's insanity. And we know that that's insanity. And so it's a part of relearning how to do normal activities and normal things without having to make it into this big fucking thing and like clench my fists. But yeah, the next part, step 6, is turning, God is written in two of these three, of 4, 5, and 6. And in 6 it says, we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. And by this point, I agree. I was entirely ready to have God remove these defects of character because we had just spent 4 and 5 writing down all our resentments and writing down all the natures of our wrongs, which is like the flip side of the initial resentment. And my sponsor sent me this like worksheet type of thing with like defects of character, and he was like, see if you can find any on here that you relate with. And I was like, oh fuck. I mean, it was just like I just handed him the paper back basically and was like, all of them. And like, it's funny and we joke about it, but I just constantly want to reinforce that the morbid reflection is not a good place to be. But
No.
we're entirely ready to have God remove them. So we write them all down. And then there's another, 6-step prayer that I did, and release that really. And 7 and 6 are kind of related, but we're not on 7. But 7 says humbly ask him to remove our shortcomings. That's kind of after you write down all of your defects of character. But yeah, man, I mean, if you're listening and this is sounding like really wild or like intense or like that sounds like that's too much or stuff like that, you're right. Like, from an outside perspective, without having had the experience that we've had, if you're not an alcoholic or an addict, like I think a big point to make is that we feel like we need to do this and it's worked for millions of people. And just to keep it a stack, like I've had unreal results through doing this. Like out of all the other things that I've ever tried, this is what brought me relief. This is it. This is what brought me relief. And have I added things on top of that, like therapy and meetings and sponsorship and working in recovery and talking with my friends and starting a podcast and posting daily? Yes. But this is what has kept me sober and is what has given me relief and what has changed my life.
Mm.
And that's all there is to it for me. This is what did it.
I don't think I could think of a better way to wrap it up than that, bro.
Yeah.
You're on the fucking on the soapbox right now, fucking telling us how it is. That's my guy. I'm
Yes,
just sitting
sir.
here like a proud younger brother.
I
You know what I mean? I mean,
mean, it's true, bro. It's like
that's
I mean, you can have it. You see it too, bro. You're in the thick of it. I was in the thick of it. People are gonna be in the thick of it. Like, it's facts.
mm,
Like,
yeah, I mean, that's all we're looking for is that freedom. That's all I want. Freedom and peace.
I
Freedom and
mean,
peace of mind. That's all it
me
is.
too. Like, I mean, like, and there's not a better example than this, bro. I woke up today pissed. No specific reason. It's my day off.
Huh.
It's
No
my day off.
specific reason, my
it's,
ass.
it's my day off of work, right? And like I was like, I'm gonna have a great day. And I would like you were like, let's run it. And I was like, bro, I don't want to do that. That's not part of my plan today.
Yeah.
And like, that's just like, even though I finished the steps, that still happens too. But like we did this, talked about it, and I feel like way lighter just talking about it. Like, thank you
We
for that.
both needed it, man. We both needed it.
I
My men's
appreciate it.
group got canceled tonight,
Really?
and we just had our own men's group.
Yes,
You know
sir.
what I mean? Both needed it. This is a powerful step, man, and it really weeds out the serious from the not so ready. And I hope I'm one of the serious, and I feel like I am. And you know, just like I said, like all I want from this is peace of mind. Like I want that feeling of lightness that you experience, and I think I can get that if I
Okay.
if I if I if I just keep writing, if I just keep digging all that stuff out from my soul. So thank you, man. This episode has been tremendously impactful for me, not just like overall, but for today. Like just rewriting how I'm feeling about today because I've been a little bit all over the place too. So and
Yeah.
we're gonna have to incorporate some of 6 and 7 when we come back to the steps.
Yeah. 6 and 7 are kind of right next to each other. But yeah, thank you for ripping that with me. I appreciate it. And it's funny, but we always say like I'm much better at giving advice than taking it. But today, taking my own advice and getting into the book, bro. I mean, like that's where that
Mm-hmm.
shit's at. And another tool, bro, that gratitude list. You ever feeling like woe is me, and write down 10 things you're grateful for and see how you feel after that.
Mm-hmm. Every time. Every time.
All right. Now I'm ready
Love
for
you,
the
bro.
gym, and I'm on some spiritual. Here we go. I'm on some spiritual motivation. I don't have to think about my eighth grade girlfriend. I'm about to get in there and praise God.
Jesus.
Nah,
I love you, bro.
I love you too.
I'll keep coming back.
Keep coming back, baby. Episode 24. Rest in peace, Kobe. Love you.